Everybody, coming up in just a bit, there's a new terror threat targeted at Americans around Christmas. That is later, but first.
Look at that. How they make me look, huh? Like a bum, like a Mamaluke. A what? Like the Mamaluke of the year.
Bring me the Mamaluke.
Peter can be quite an idiot. Mamaluke.
Now it's time for our daily feature called Mamaluke of the Day. This is where we highlight those individuals who say and do things which prove, well, they just can't help being a Mamaluke. Number 3 on our list is the 5 St. Louis Rams football players who raised their hands in a hands-up, don't shoot gesture in solidarity with Michael Brown protesters. First of all, the beautiful thing about sports is that it does not involve politics or polarizing social issues. It is the one place in society where you can go for 3 hours and get away from life's distractions. And be one and the same with all those around you in support of the hometown team. Those 5 players changed that on Sunday, and in the process, they also offended the local St. Louis police officers. The NFL must take action against preventing it from being repeated or risk damaging the commercial appeal of its product. Number 2 on our list for Mamaluke of the Day is the organizers of actor Mickey Rourke's recent boxing match. Last week, 62-year-old Mickey Rourke defeated a 29-year-old professional boxer by the name of Elliot Seymour in a match held in Moscow. Now, it is being reported that the 29-year-old Seymour is really a desperate homeless person with mental problems and was paid by fight organizers to fly to Moscow and deliberately lose the match against Rourke. The fact that this fake bout took place in Putin's Moscow is the only thing about this story that makes any sense. And number 1 on our list for Mamaluke of the Day is Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan. In the early 1960s, there was a television documentary called The Hate That Hate Created. Louis Farrakhan was a featured guest in the documentary. Now, fast forward to the year 2014. While speaking to students at Morgan State University on Saturday, Farrakhan threatened, quote, "We will tear down this goddamn country if the demands of Ferguson protesters are not met." Always a man of peace and goodwill, Farrakhan even said parents of teenagers should teach their kids how to throw Molotov cocktails. Quote, "Teach your baby how to throw the bottle if they can," end quote. All of which makes the mild-mannered, even-tempered man of goodwill, Louis Farrakhan, our Mamaluke of the Day. And quick note about the Ferguson violence, I mentioned it in the previous segment. The protests have now attracted the supports of ISIS, Vladimir Putin's propaganda department, and now Louis Farrakhan. What a trio. That speaks volumes about what's happening there. All right, moving on now. Joining me at this time from Washington, D.C. is Amber Smith. Amber is an expert on security and reconnaissance operations, I should say. She is also a U.S. military veteran, having served 8 years, 2 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan as a helicopter pilot, and she joins us now. Amber, good to see you.
Hi, Rick. It's great to be here.
All right, great to have you. Now, Amber, you've been writing about ISIS in the way that President Obama has approached fighting them. Something I want to talk about that I believe many Americans are not aware of. It's chilling to think of. ISIS now has had for quite some time now a 26-year-old American female as a hostage. This woman had been in Syria to try and help orphan children who were displaced due to the Syrian civil war, and she is now a hostage of ISIS. Our prayers are with her because it's got to be a bad situation. You have recently written in a Daily Caller that you believe there are 2 ways to fight ISIS, and President Obama is fighting them the wrong way. How so?
Well, what we're seeing so far in the fight against ISIS is not a very aggressive campaign. doing sort of these pinprick airstrikes here and there, basically at targets of opportunity, aren't cutting it. They might degrade ISIS for a certain amount of time in terms of their supply routes and their fighting capabilities, but when you look at it long term, we are nowhere near destroying ISIS, and that's what our end state needs to be, and we need to be fighting them accordingly. And right now, no one can give you a definitive answer on what Obama's strategy is against ISIS, but we know the one right now is not doing very much at all.
So the strategy should be to destroy them.
That's absolutely correct. That's the mindset that we need to have. That's what the mission needs to be very clear for our military to go in and make sure that they're accomplishing that goal. But right now, that's not the aggressive technique that we're seeing. We're just seeing airstrikes that are sort of degrading them instead of really taking the gloves off and saying, look, there is going to actually need to be more in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of more collaboration with other nations on the ground inside Iraq, and basically knowing who we're arming inside Syria and making sure that that's actually happening. The White House has said that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on arming these rebels inside Syria, and it's yet to happen.
Well, there's no question, Amber Smith, we've interviewed a lot of people on this show, yourself included, and the prevailing conclusion that I get from most of the experts like yourself who've been on this show over the last couple of months talking about the fight with ISIS has been that this president is not committed to defeating ISIS. He is committed to kicking the can down the road until he gets out of office and let the next person who occupies the Oval Office figure it out, which could lead to dangerous consequences for years to come. Now, this, as you know, Amber, as you know better than I, is an untraditional war. We're not fighting a nation. We are fighting an ideology. Bigger picture, we're fighting an ideology of Islamic extremism more so than ISIS. Given that this is non-traditional, given that we're fighting a mindset, what do you believe the tactics and the methods should be that we should employ in order to defeat ISIS, as you say?
Well, we fought terrorist organizations before. We've been at war with them for over the past 13 years. Our military has, more than any time in our history, has the expertise and experience of fighting these terrorist organizations in Iraq, in Afghanistan. And yes, ISIS is a newly emerged terrorist organization. They're better funded, better equipped. They operate more of an army rather than a terrorist organization, as we've seen in the past. But we have experience with this, and so it's not a winnable war when we say, oh, we're just going to use a little bit of our might instead of all of it to make sure you are gone and decimated and completely annihilated, which needs to be the insight. So right now you've got a completely sort of ambiguous mission where our military is saying, we're not sure what our end state is supposed to be. And that's very dangerous for the military members who have to be fighting this war. And so we really would like to see President Obama stop micromanaging the Department of Defense and allow his military strategists and experts and generals and top military advisors to come up with a strategy and basically the leeway to get it done, because it can be done. Don't underestimate the might of our military if you give them the freedom to make sure they get the job done.
As you say, we have the experience at winning this sort of battle, this sort of war in the past with terrorists and extremism. Switching gears, by the way, before I switch gears, there's a report out saying that the relationship between President Obama and the Pentagon is strained. Would you agree with that?
I would. I think Secretary of Defense in Obama's time as president is very telling, and the fact that two people who were sort of thought to might be the next nominee have basically stepped away and said they're not interested in the job. A lot of people don't want to have to attempt to lead a department where they're going to be micromanagement, and President Obama doesn't necessarily want their expertise. He just wants them to stand there and do whatever President Obama says instead of making the recommendations that the Department of Defense, it's in their best interest and our country's national security interests.
That's troubling, extremely troubling. Switching gears now, I ask you to keep your answer brief in the remaining moment. There's a report out that that Al Qaeda is planning an attack of European passenger civilian airliner around the Christmas holidays. In fact, one person has spoken to the press without having his identity revealed, and he said that some European airliners may ban luggage and cell phones from being carried. That's how concerned they are about an attack around Christmas time. How concerned should we be here in America about an Al Qaeda or a radical Islamic attack, either on an airliner or on our soil, right around Christmas?
Well, I think that you're going to see these terrorist organizations continue to target any sort of Western symbolic dates like Christmas, the election, 4th of July, New Year's Eve, something like that. So we need to make sure that we are constantly vigilant and never get complacent, because they will definitely look to exploit those weaknesses, and you never want to get complacent. So just that's probably the number one thing to remember here, because they're always going to be looking for opportunities to hurt the United States, hurt America, and our Western allies as well. All
right, Amber Smith, national security expert, 8-year veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Thank you for joining us. Burning stores, burning stores. It's another riot in Ferguson.